Victoria Chin's voice cuts through the boardroom like a blade through silk. 43 investors freeze mid-gesture, every phone camera pivoting toward the figure in the doorway. The man stands there in a wrinkled gray uniform, mop bucket gripped in calloused hands, an employee badge dangling from his chest that reads "Maintenance Staff" in block letters. His work boots leave faint wet marks on the marble floor, each step a reminder that he doesn't belong in this world of leather chairs and seven-figure deals. Victoria rises slowly from her position at the head of the table, her designer suit probably worth more than this man earns in 6 months, and her eyes narrow with the kind of cold precision that built her empire from nothing. She takes 3 measured steps toward him, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown to execution. "Do you have any earthly idea how much money is being discussed in this room right now?" Victoria's words hang in the air, sharp and dangerous. "Or are you simply another minimum wage worker who believes that eavesdropping on conversations far above your pay grade somehow counts as professional development?" The investors shift uncomfortably in their seats, some smirking, others looking away, but all of them watching to see what happens next. The man at the door, whose name tag identifies him as Daniel Ross, feels his throat constrict. His heart hammers against his ribcage because 3 floors below, in the building's emergency childcare facility, his 8-year-old daughter Emma waits for Daddy to finish his shift. Emma, who needs medication that costs $4,000 every single month just to stay alive. Emma, who is the only reason he tolerates the humiliation of jobs like this one. The only reason he can't afford to lose his temper or his employment or anything else that keeps them both afloat in this merciless city. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize," Daniel begins, but before he can finish his sentence, another voice slices through the tension. No, the voice belongs to Thomas Blackwood, who stands with the predatory grace of a man who has never lost anything important in his entire life. As chief investment officer and Victoria's right hand, Thomas has a reputation that precedes him through every trading floor and executive suite in the financial district. He's the kind of man who smiles when he destroys careers, who takes genuine pleasure in watching lesser beings realize they've made catastrophic mistakes. "Ms. Chun asked you a direct question," Thomas says, his smile widening as he gestures toward Daniel with mock courtesy. "You've been standing outside that door for at least 15 minutes, listening to investment strategies that you couldn't possibly comprehend even if someone drew you diagrams with crayons. So let's make this educational, shall we?" He points to the massive screen behind Victoria, where charts and projections and risk models dance across the display, representing a $2.4 billion trade set to execute in less than 2 hours. "Tell us, cleaning man, what's your expert opinion on the Nakamura Electronics acquisition? Should we invest our clients' money? Or do you somehow see problems that 43 licensed professionals with advanced degrees have mysteriously overlooked?" The room erupts in laughter, the kind of cruel amusement that comes easily to people who have never worried about rent or medical bills or whether their children will eat dinner tonight. Someone in the back row is already typing on their phone, probably posting to social media about the janitor who crashed an executive meeting at one of the city's most prestigious investment firms. Victoria's expression shifts into something that might be amusement or might be curiosity. It's hard to tell with someone who has spent decades perfecting the art of revealing nothing. "Go ahead," she says, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet that somehow carries more weight than shouting. "Enlighten us. Where exactly should we put $2.4 billion of our clients' money?" Daniel stares at the screen, at the numbers and graphs and projections, and something in his brain begins clicking into place like tumblers in a lock. His mind, trained through 7 years of obsessive study and pattern recognition, starts cross-referencing data points and financial indicators against everything he's memorized from thousands of hours of research. He sees red flags in the data that these wealthy, educated professionals have somehow missed, patterns that scream danger to anyone who knows what to look for. Every instinct screams at him to apologize profusely, to back out of the room, to disappear into the service corridors where people like him belong. But then he looks at those numbers again, really looks at them, and he knows with absolute certainty what will happen if these people make this trade. His hands tremble as he sets down the mop bucket, the sound of plastic touching marble echoing in the sudden silence. "You can't invest in Nakamura," he says quietly, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through his veins. The laughter dies instantly, cut off like someone flipped a switch. Victoria's expression hardens into something cold and dangerous, the look of a woman who has crushed bigger obstacles than a janitor with opinions. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" "The merger you're planning to bet $2.4 billion on." Daniel's voice grows stronger even as his heart threatens to pound out of his chest. "It's going to collapse in exactly." He glances at the wall clock, calculating time zones and market openings. 4 hours and 19 minutes when the Asian markets open. "And if you invest tonight, every single dollar you put in disappears like smoke." Thomas Blackwood's face flashes with something dark and ugly before his smooth smile returns. And in that microsecond of genuine emotion, Daniel sees something that confirms every suspicion he's been harboring for weeks. And how exactly would a janitor know that? Thomas's voice carries an edge now, sharp enough to cut, and he takes a step toward Daniel with the kind of casual menace that comes from years of intimidating people into submission. Daniel points to the third column of data on the screen, still clutching his cleaning rag in his other hand like some kind of absurd security blanket. Because Nakamura's quarterly earnings are inflated by exactly 34.2%, he says, his voice gaining confidence as the numbers align in his head. It's the same percentage as the Sato financial fraud back in 2018, the same shell company structure, the same offshore routing through subsidiaries in Hong Kong. Their CFO is cooking the books, and when their mandatory regulatory filing hits the authorities in just over 4 hours, this entire merger implodes. You'll lose everything, every penny, and your clients will destroy you for it. The silence that follows is so complete that Daniel can hear the ventilation system humming, can hear someone's phone buzzing on the table, can hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Victoria Chin stares at this janitor who just deconstructed in less than 60 seconds what her entire team spent 6 weeks building, and her knuckles have gone white where they press against the mahogany table. "Who the hell are you?" Victoria's question isn't rhetorical. It's a demand, an order, the voice of someone who has built an empire on knowing everything about everyone who matters. Daniel meets her gaze directly for the first time, and something passes between them in that moment. A recognition of intelligence meeting intelligence across an impossible divide of wealth and circumstance. "Someone who's seen this exact pattern before," Daniel says quietly. "Someone who knows what fraud looks like when everyone else is too busy celebrating projected profits to notice the foundation is built on lies." "This is completely insane," Thomas says, but his voice wavers just slightly, just enough that several board members glance at him with new uncertainty. "Miss Chun, we're seriously considering taking investment advice from a man whose job involves cleaning toilets and mopping floors." But before Victoria can respond, a woman's voice interrupts from the back of the room. Actually, the voice belongs to Jennifer Park, one of Victoria's senior analysts, and she's staring at her laptop screen with an expression of growing horror. "He might be right. I'm pulling Nakamura's subsidiary filings from the Hong Kong exchange right now, and there are discrepancies here. Major ones. The numbers don't match their consolidated statements at all." The energy in the room shifts palpably, like the moment before a storm breaks. Investors lean forward in their seats, conversations dying mid-sentence. Victoria's laser focus locks onto Daniel with an intensity that makes him feel like he's being x-rayed, like she's seeing straight through his janitor's uniform to whatever lies beneath. "You have exactly 5 minutes, she says, her voice cutting through the rising murmur of conversation. "Explain everything in detail. And if you're wasting my time or playing some kind of elaborate con, security will escort you out permanently, and I'll make certain you never work in this building or any other building in this city ever again." Daniel sets down his mop bucket with shaking hands, his heart hammering so hard he's surprised nobody else can hear it. His mind races ahead, organizing data points and connecting patterns, building the case that might save these people billions or might destroy what little he has left. He thinks about Emma 3 floors below, about insulin pumps and hospital bills, and the razor-thin margin between survival and catastrophe that has defined his life for 7 years. Then he takes a breath and begins. Nakamura Electronics reported $847 million in third-quarter revenue, Daniel says, his voice steadying as he falls into the familiar rhythm of analysis. "But if you cross-reference their Hong Kong subsidiary disclosures with their domestic filings, the numbers don't match. There's a $289 million gap being funneled through shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands, and the CFO, a man named Takashi Yamamoto, used this exact same structure when he worked at Sato Financial before their collapse. Jennifer's fingers fly across her keyboard, pulling up records and filings. "Oh my God," she breathes. He's right. Yamamoto was Sato's VP of Finance until 2018, left 3 months before the scandal broke. That's purely circumstantial, Thomas argues, but sweat is forming at his temples now, visible under the harsh boardroom lights. "We've done extensive due diligence on this acquisition, months of research and analysis. Your due diligence missed the subsidiary structure because you only focused on consolidated statements," Daniel interrupts, and there's no apology in his voice now, just cold certainty. But the pattern is there if you know where to look. Revenue inflation of exactly 34.2%, achieved through intercompany transactions that don't actually represent real business activity. It's accounting fraud disguised as growth. And when the regulators publish their audit findings at 9 a.m. their time, the merger announcement gets pulled, the stock price crashes, and everyone who invested loses everything. Victoria picks up her phone without taking her eyes off Daniel. "Margaret," she says when someone answers. "Give me the head of our Asian operations office immediately. I don't care what time it is there or what meeting he's in." She pauses, still watching Daniel with that unnerving intensity. "And pull every file we have on Nakamura Electronics. I want everything on my desk in 20 minutes. She ends the call and leans forward. "If you're wrong about this, I'll make absolutely certain you never work in this building again. That's not a threat, it's a promise. But if you're right..." She pauses, and something shifts in her expression. How does a janitor know this much about international securities fraud? "It's a long story," Daniel says, feeling exhaustion creeping in around the edges of his adrenaline. "I've got time," Victoria replies. And suddenly Daniel realizes that his life is about to change completely, one way or another. And there's no going back to the comfortable invisibility of mopping floors and hoping nobody notices him. Before he can answer, Jennifer speaks up again, her voice tight with tension. "Miss Chun, I'm finding more irregularities. The intercompany transactions he's talking about, they're real, and they follow the exact same pattern as Sato Financial before they collapsed. If we invest in this merger based on fraudulent numbers, we're not just losing money, we're potentially liable for due diligence failures. Cancel it." Victoria's voice cuts through the room like steel through paper, sharp and absolute, and leaving no room for negotiation or discussion. "Cancel the entire Nakamura trade. All of it, immediately. Contact every single client on the call list and inform them that the deal is off, effective now." "Victoria, we can't just..." Thomas starts, but Victoria rounds on him with such fury that he actually takes a step backward. "We can and we are," she snaps. "Jennifer, I want a complete forensic audit of Nakamura's financials on my desk within 3 hours. Use every resource we have. Pull in the Asian team. I don't care who you have to wake up or what it costs." She turns back to Daniel, and her expression is unreadable now, somewhere between impressed and furious, and something else he can't quite identify. "You, my office, right now." The walk to Victoria's office feels like a death march through enemy territory. Daniel's hands won't stop shaking, and through the glass walls that separate executive row from the main floor, he can see other employees stopping their work to stare. Word travels at the speed of light in buildings like this one, carried on whispers and text messages and knowing glances. By morning, everyone will know that the janitor crashed an executive meeting and somehow convinced the CEO to cancel a multi-billion-dollar trade based on nothing but his gut instinct and pattern recognition. Victoria's office occupies the entire corner of the 53rd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that makes Daniel feel dizzy. The furniture probably costs more than he's earned in the last 5 years combined. All sleek lines and expensive materials that whisper rather than shout their value. "Sit," Victoria commands, not looking at him as she pours 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter that probably costs more than his monthly rent. She hands him one and leans against her desk, arms crossed, studying him with the intensity of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. "Start talking," she says. "Who are you really?" Daniel drains the entire glass in 3 long swallows, his mouth desert dry from fear and adrenaline. "My name is Daniel Ross. He begins, setting the glass down carefully on a coaster that looks like it might be actual marble. 7 years ago, I was a senior analyst at Harrison and Pierce, one of the top emerging market specialists in the country. Recognition flashes in Victoria's eyes because everyone in finance knows that name, knows what happened there. The firm that went under in the Princeton data scandal, she says, her voice neutral but her eyes sharp. I didn't work on Princeton data, Daniel says quickly. I worked in emerging markets, primarily Asian securities. But I found something, a pattern of fraudulent trades being routed through our Hong Kong office. $500 million moving through shell companies that didn't exist. When I reported it to the senior partners, thinking I was doing the right thing, they destroyed me. They turned on you, Victoria says, and it's not a question because she already knows how this story goes, has probably seen it play out a dozen times in her career. They blamed me for the fraud, claimed I'd been orchestrating it and got caught. Daniel's voice is flat now, reciting facts that still hurt even after 7 years. I lost my licenses, my career, my marriage. Spent 2 years fighting criminal charges that eventually got dropped for lack of evidence. But by then my reputation was destroyed completely. No firm would touch me. Nobody would even return my calls. I was radioactive, toxic, the analyst who supposedly committed massive fraud. Victoria studies him with an intensity that makes Daniel feel stripped bare, like she's reading his entire history in his face and posture and the way his hands won't quite stop trembling. So you became a janitor, she says, and there's no mockery in her voice now, just statement of fact. I needed health insurance, Daniel says quietly. My daughter has juvenile diabetes, type 1, diagnosed when she was 4. The medication costs almost $4,000 every month. And that's just the insulin, not counting the pump supplies and the continuous glucose monitor and all the other things she needs to stay alive. This company's janitorial contractor offers benefits that actually cover her treatment, which is more than most places. So yes, I clean floors and empty trash cans, and I listen and I watch, because I never stopped studying markets, never stopped seeing patterns. I just couldn't do anything about them anymore, couldn't warn anyone or save anyone or use what I knew. Not until tonight. Not until you forced me to speak up. The intercom on Victoria's desk buzzes, breaking the tension. Ms. Chun, her assistant's voice says, Asian operations on line 1. They're confirming significant discrepancies in the Nakamura filings. Victoria picks up the phone, her expression hardening with each passing second. Talk to me, she says, and then listens in silence for nearly 3 minutes while someone on the other end presumably confirms Daniel's worst predictions. Send me everything, she finally says. I want complete documentation within the hour, every file, every transaction record, everything. She hangs up and looks at Daniel with something that might actually be respect, though it's hard to tell with someone who has spent decades perfecting an impenetrable professional mask. You just saved this firm from the biggest loss in its history, she says quietly. Our Asian team confirms everything you said, every detail. Nakamura's merger announcement is being delayed pending regulatory investigation, and if we'd invested the $2.4 billion, we would have lost every penny. She walks to the window, her silhouette framed against the city lights like some kind of modern goddess overlooking her domain. How much do we pay you to clean our floors? $32,000 a year plus benefits, Daniel says, and hearing it out loud makes it sound even worse than it feels. Victoria laughs, but it's a sharp, humorless sound that holds no amusement whatsoever. I just paid Thomas Blackwood $800,000 in bonuses this year, and he missed fraud that a janitor spotted in 15 minutes while eavesdropping from a doorway. She turns around, and her expression is calculating now, the look of someone making a business decision that will change everything. What do you want, Daniel Ross? What do you actually want from this situation? I want to keep my job, Daniel says immediately. I need the insurance for my daughter. I can't lose that. Can't risk her health for anything. That's the absolute minimum you should want, Victoria says, and now she's walking toward him with purpose. I'm offering you a trial position as a junior analyst, $60,000 base salary, full benefits package, performance bonuses based on results. You work with Jennifer's team for 3 months, and if you're as good as tonight suggests, we make it permanent and discuss senior positions. If you're not, we part ways professionally with a generous severance. Daniel's heart stops completely. You're serious, he manages to say. I don't joke about money or talent, Victoria replies. You clearly have both, And I didn't build this firm by ignoring obvious assets when they present themselves. The question is whether you can do this job every single day, not just once in a crisis situation when adrenaline carries you through. Her eyes narrow slightly. But I need to know something first, and I need complete honesty. Are you running some kind of elaborate con? Because if this is corporate espionage, if you're working for competitors or trying to position yourself for some kind of lawsuit or blackmail, I will destroy you so completely that you'll wish you'd never heard my name. I'm not running anything, Daniel says, and his voice cracks slightly because the weight of 7 years is pressing down on his chest, 7 years of scraping by and being invisible and pretending he doesn't see the patterns that used to define his entire existence. I'm just a father trying to keep his daughter alive and healthy. That's literally all I've been for 7 years. And if you're offering me a chance to do what I'm actually good at while still keeping her safe, then I'll take it and prove every single day that you made the right choice. Something in Victoria's expression softens, almost imperceptibly, like watching ice begin to crack under spring sunshine. Be here tomorrow at 8 a.m., she says. Wear something that isn't a janitor's uniform, and we'll see what you're really capable of when you're not eavesdropping from doorways. But Daniel, and her voice drops to something almost dangerous, whatever happened at Harrison and Pierce, I'm going to investigate every detail personally. If you lied to me about anything, if there's any truth to those fraud accusations, this offer disappears and you'll face consequences that make losing a janitorial job look pleasant. I didn't lie, Daniel says, meeting her eyes. Everything I told you is exactly what happened, and I have documentation to prove it if you want to see it. Good, Victoria replies. Now go get your daughter. It's late and she needs you. Daniel leaves the office in a daze, his legs unsteady as he walks to the elevator. 3 hours ago, he was mopping floors and trying to be invisible, and now he has an analyst position at one of the city's most prestigious investment firms, and it doesn't feel real at all. It feels like the universe is playing some elaborate, cruel joke that will collapse at any moment, revealing itself as a dream or a hallucination or some kind of massive misunderstanding. The elevator ride down feels surreal, the numbers descending from 53 to ground level marking some kind of transition between worlds, between who he was and who he might become. Emma is asleep in the building's emergency childcare facility when Daniel arrives, curled up in an oversized chair with her insulin pump visible under her favorite shirt with cartoon characters on it. He gently shakes her shoulder, and she opens her eyes slowly, confusion giving way to recognition and then to the smile that makes everything worth it. Daddy, she mumbles, rubbing her eyes with small fists. Is it home time? Yeah, baby, it's home time, Daniel says, scooping her up carefully, mindful of the pump and its tubes. Did you finish cleaning all the floors? I did something different tonight, Daniel tells her, holding her close as they walk toward the exit. I'll tell you about it tomorrow when you're more awake. Okay, Emma yawns and rests her head on his shoulder, her breath warm against his neck. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart, Daniel whispers. More than anything in the entire world. As they leave the building, Daniel glances back at the lit windows of the 53rd floor, at Victoria's office still bright against the night sky. She's probably already working, already investigating him, already testing whether tonight was real insight or elaborate deception. What he doesn't know is that 53 floors above, Victoria Chun is indeed staring at financial records from Harrison and Pierce, reading about a junior analyst who tried to expose massive fraud and was systematically destroyed for his honesty. She doesn't know why she cares, has built her empire on ruthless pragmatism and judging people by results rather than circumstances or sob stories. But something about the janitor who spoke truth to power while risking everything he had, something about a father working night shifts to afford medication for his daughter, something about raw intelligence trapped in circumstances beyond its control, it refuses to leave her mind. She pulls up the fraud case files, the accusations against Daniel, and starts reading with the analytical precision that made her billions. And the more she reads, the more certain she becomes that Daniel Ross is telling the truth, that he was a scapegoat for powerful men who needed someone expendable to take the fall. The question is whether she's willing to bet her firm's reputation on a man that everyone else has already written off as damaged goods. The next morning arrives too quickly, pulling Daniel from restless sleep, filled with dreams of boardrooms and numbers and Victoria's piercing gaze. He stands outside the building at 7:45, wearing the only suit he owns, a 5-year-old department store special that's slightly too big in the shoulders and slightly too short in the sleeves. He dropped Emma at school with promises to pick her up on time, then took the subway to the financial district with his heart pounding against his ribs like it's trying to escape. The building looks completely different in daylight, less fortress and more glass cathedral dedicated to the worship of money and ambition. Employees stream through the revolving doors in expensive suits and designer accessories, everyone moving with the easy confidence of people whose worth has never been questioned, who have never had to choose between medication and rent. Security recognizes him immediately, which shouldn't be surprising but somehow is. "Mr. Ross," the guard says with something that might be newfound respect. Ms. Chun left specific instructions. "Take the executive elevator to 53. She's expecting you." The ride up is pure torture, and Daniel catches his reflection in the polished steel of the elevator walls. He looks like someone playing dress up, like a child wearing his father's clothes, like a fraud trying to pass as something he's not. The doors open to absolute chaos that stops him in his tracks. "This is completely insane," someone is saying loudly. "We're actually hiring someone who was accused of securities fraud. He knows what he's talking about," another voice argues. "Did you see how fast he deconstructed the Nakamura deal? That was brilliant analysis." "A janitor, for God's sake," the first voice continues. "This is one of the most prestigious firms in the country, not some charity program for down-on-their-luck ex-analysts." Jennifer Park spots Daniel first, extricating herself from a cluster of arguing analysts and walking toward him with a tablet and a smile that seems genuine. "Welcome to the war zone," she says cheerfully. "Half the analysts think you're some kind of savant genius. The other half think Victoria's lost her mind completely. Thomas has been in her office for 30 minutes arguing against your hire, claiming you're a liability and a PR disaster waiting to happen. Maybe I should come back later," Daniel suggests, but Jennifer shakes her head firmly. "Don't you dare," she says, handing him the tablet. "This has your workstation assignment, building access codes, system login credentials, everything you need. You're on my team, which means you report directly to me and I report to Victoria. Your first assignment is analyzing the entire Nakamura situation in detail. We need a comprehensive report by end of day documenting exactly how you identified the fraud and what other warning signs we should have caught." "Jennifer," Thomas Blackwood's voice cuts through the surrounding noise like a knife. He's walking toward them with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes at all, the smile of a predator who's just spotted wounded prey. "I see our newest employee has arrived right on schedule. Daniel, isn't it? Welcome to the firm. I'm sure this will be a fascinating experiment for everyone involved." The emphasis on experiment makes it clear that this is temporary, probational, one mistake away from ending badly. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood," Daniel says carefully, aware that every word is being weighed and measured by dozens of listening ears. "Call me Thomas," he replies smoothly, though his eyes remain cold and calculating. "We're all colleagues here now, regardless of our previous positions or backgrounds." His smile sharpens like a blade being honed. "Though I have to say, Victoria is taking quite a substantial risk hiring someone with your particular history. Harrison and Pierce was a difficult situation, wasn't it? All those accusations of fraud that nearly resulted in criminal prosecution, all that unpleasantness." Jennifer's expression hardens into something protective and angry. "The charges were dropped completely," she says firmly. "Daniel was cleared of any wrongdoing." "Dropped isn't quite the same as cleared," Thomas counters, his tone remaining pleasant while his words cut deep. "But I'm absolutely certain everything will work out fine." He pats Daniel's shoulder in a gesture that feels more like a threat than encouragement. "Just remember, this is the major leagues now, not some back office operation. We can't afford mistakes here, not the kind that cost clients money or damage the firm's reputation. Not like wherever you've been working recently." He walks away, leaving tension hanging in the air like smoke after an explosion, and Daniel realizes with absolute certainty that Thomas Blackwood is going to be a problem, possibly a dangerous one. "Don't let him rattle you," Jennifer says quietly once Thomas is out of earshot. "He doesn't like anyone who threatens his position as Victoria's primary advisor and golden boy. And you definitely threatened that last night when you made him look incompetent in front of 43 investors." "I didn't mean to threaten anyone," Daniel protests. "Too late for that," Jennifer replies with a wry smile. "You made him look bad, and men like Thomas don't forgive that easily. Don't forget it either. They hold grudges and wait for opportunities to strike back. Before Daniel can respond, Victoria's office door opens and she gestures for him to enter with an expression that reveals nothing. He walks in on shaking legs to find her on the phone, her voice cold and precise. "I don't care what the board thinks, Marcus," she's saying to whoever is on the other end. "We avoided a catastrophic loss that would have destroyed client confidence. That's what matters. That's the only thing that matters." She hangs up without waiting for a response and studies Daniel with that same unnerving intensity from last night. "You look terrified," she observes. "Honestly, I am," Daniel admits, because lying to Victoria Chen seems like a spectacularly bad idea. "Good," she says, and something that might be approval flickers across her face. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you from getting complacent or overconfident. She hands him a thick file folder that lands on the desk between them with a heavy thump. "I spent most of last night investigating you instead of sleeping," she says. "The Harrison and Pierce scandal, the fraud accusations, all of it. Every detail I could find. Do you want to know what I discovered?" Daniel's mouth goes completely dry, his heart hammering so hard he can feel it in his fingertips. "What did you find?" "That you were telling the absolute truth," Victoria says, and relief floods through him so intensely he feels dizzy. The senior partners at Harrison and Pierce were running a massive fraud scheme through their Hong Kong office, over $500 million in fake trades and money laundering. When you discovered it and reported it like a naive idiot who still believed in doing the right thing, they needed a scapegoat immediately. You were junior enough to be expendable, smart enough to make the accusations plausible, and naive enough not to see it coming until it was far too late to protect yourself. She leans back in her chair, watching his reaction carefully. They destroyed you to save themselves, used their connections and influence to make sure you could never work in finance again. "You believe me," Daniel says, and it's not quite a question, more like stunned disbelief that someone finally sees the truth. "I believe evidence," Victoria replies. "And the evidence says you got screwed by people who should have protected you, who should have listened when you raised legitimate concerns." She pauses, her gaze intense. "But here's what I need to know now, what I need complete honesty about. Are you going to be able to do this job without that history destroying you all over again? Because the moment word spreads about who you are and what happened, people will use it against you constantly. They'll question every analysis you make, every recommendation you give, every decision you're involved in. Can you handle that level of scrutiny and suspicion?" Daniel thinks about Emma, about insulin pumps and hospital bills and 7 years of barely surviving. About the dream he thought was dead and buried forever, now somehow resurrected and offered back to him like some kind of miracle. "Yes," he says firmly. "I can handle it, whatever it takes." "Then get to work," Victoria says, dismissing him with a gesture. "Jennifer will guide you through your first assignment, and Daniel, one more thing." She waits until he's at the door before continuing. "Don't make me regret this decision. Don't give me any reason to doubt you." "I won't," Daniel promises, and he means it with every fiber of his being. 3 weeks pass in an absolute blur of spreadsheets and market analysis, and slowly, grudgingly winning over skeptical colleagues who expected him to fail spectacularly. Daniel works 12 and 14-hour days, arriving early and staying late, building reports so thorough and well-researched that they can't be dismissed or ignored. He identifies 3 more potential fraud situations before they become actual problems, saves clients from bad investments, catches discrepancies that more experienced analysts missed. Slowly, piece by piece, people start to respect him, start to see past the janitor uniform to the brilliant mind underneath. But not everyone is convinced, not everyone is pleased with his success. Thomas Blackwood watches from his corner office like a spider monitoring its web, patient and calculating and waiting for the right moment to strike. He compliments Daniel's work in meetings while subtly undermining him in private conversations with other executives. He questions his analysis just enough to plant seeds of doubt without seeming overtly hostile. He reminds people about Harrison and Pierce whenever Daniel isn't in the room, keeping that history alive and poisonous. And he does something else too, something that nobody notices because Thomas is very good at being careful. He starts accessing Daniel's computer after hours when the building is mostly empty, studying his methods and patterns and analysis techniques. Because Thomas has a problem that's getting exponentially worse with each passing day, a secret that's buried in the firm's books, and Daniel Ross is exactly the kind of analyst who might stumble onto it accidentally. The kind of pattern recognition genius who sees connections that others miss, who notices discrepancies that should be invisible. Thomas needs to know what Daniel knows, needs to stay one step ahead, needs to be ready to neutralize the threat before it becomes catastrophic. The person who notices this subtle war isn't Jennifer or the other analysts. It's Victoria, watching everything from her 53rd floor office with the perspective that comes from building an empire through constant vigilance. She sees how Thomas positions himself, how he manages perception, how he's working to control the narrative around Daniel. And she starts to wonder what Thomas is really afraid of, what he's actually protecting. One evening about a month into Daniel's new position, Victoria finds herself working late when he returns to the building at 8 p.m., long after most employees have gone home. "You're back," she says, appearing in the hallway and startling him slightly. "Emma's asleep," Daniel explains, looking exhausted but determined. "My neighbor's watching her for a few hours so I could finish the Thompson Industries report without distractions." "You don't have to work nights to prove yourself," Victoria says, though there's something in her tone that suggests she understands exactly why he does it anyway. "Yes, I do," Daniel replies, meeting her eyes directly. "Everyone here knows I was cleaning floors a month ago. They're all waiting for me to fail spectacularly so they can say they knew it all along. I can't give them that satisfaction, can't give them any ammunition." Victoria understands that drive more than he realizes, has lived it herself for decades. She built her firm from absolutely nothing, fighting every single day against men who said women couldn't run investment companies, who said she was too aggressive or too cold or too ambitious. She worked twice as hard for half the recognition until she became too successful to ignore or dismiss. "Have dinner with me," she says suddenly, the words coming out before she fully thinks them through. Daniel blinks, clearly caught off guard. "What?" "Dinner," Victoria repeats, committing to the impulse now. "There's a place 2 blocks from here that stays open late, nothing fancy. You need to eat, I need to eat, and we can discuss the Thompson situation without 40 people eavesdropping on every word." She pauses, watching his reaction carefully. "Is this a business dinner or something else?" Daniel asks, and there's vulnerability in the question that makes Victoria pause. "Does it matter?" Victoria replies, which isn't really an answer at all. "I'm asking if you want to get dinner with me. Yes or no?" Daniel hesitates for only a fraction of a second before something shifts in his expression. "Yes," he says simply. The restaurant is small and unremarkable, tucked between 2 larger buildings, the kind of place where working people eat when they can't afford the trendy spots that charge $50 for a salad. They sit in a corner booth with cracked vinyl seats and lighting that makes everyone look slightly tired. "You come here often?" Daniel asks, trying to make conversation while his mind races with questions about what this actually means. "I used to when I was starting out and couldn't afford anything else," Victoria says, ordering without looking at the menu. "This is where I came the night I decided to quit my job and start my own firm. I was 29 years old, working for a company that paid me 60% of what they paid men with half my talent and a quarter of my results. So I walked out, came here, and planned my empire on paper napkins while eating cheap noodles." "How long did it take?" Daniel asks, genuinely curious now. 15 years of 18-hour days, Victoria says, and there's something raw in her voice that he's never heard before. 15 years of being told I'd fail, that women couldn't handle high-stakes finance, that I was too ambitious or too emotional or too difficult to work with. She looks directly at him across the table. "I didn't build this firm by being nice or making friends. I built it by being better than everyone else and refusing to quit even when quitting would have been easier. That's what I'm trying to do now," Daniel says quietly. "Be better, prove I deserve to be there instead of cleaning the floors." "You've already proven it," Victoria replies. "The Nakamura analysis alone justified your hire 10 times over. Everything since then is just you being excellent at a job you were always meant to do." She leans back, studying him. "But I'm curious about something else, something personal. You have a daughter, you've mentioned her several times. Where's her mother?" The question lands like a physical blow, and Daniel takes a long drink of water before answering. "Rebecca left when Emma was 2, he says finally, his voice carefully controlled. After I lost everything at Harrison and Pierce, after the accusations and the criminal charges, and watching our entire life collapse, she couldn't handle it. The poverty, the shame, the way people looked at us like we were criminals. She wanted the life we'd planned together, the Manhattan apartment, and private schools and vacations in Europe. Not a husband facing fraud charges who couldn't get hired anywhere and was working 3 jobs just to pay rent. His voice flattens into pure factual recitation, the only way he can tell this story without breaking. She moved across the country, remarried someone wealthy and stable, sends Emma a birthday card twice a year, and that's it. That's her entire contribution to our daughter's life. "I'm sorry," Victoria says, and means it. "Don't be," Daniel replies. "Emma and I are better off this way, just the 2 of us. We have each other, and that's enough. That's everything that matters." Victoria sees something in his face then, a protective love so fierce and absolute, it's almost painful to witness. She's never had that, never wanted children, never made space in her life for anything except ambition and success, and proving herself again and again. But watching Daniel talk about his daughter, she wonders what it's like to love someone more than your own achievements, more than money or power or reputation. "Tell me about her," Victoria says softly. "What's she like?" And Daniel does, his whole face transforming as he talks. He tells her about Emma's diabetes diagnosis, the terror of learning to manage a disease that could kill her if he makes mistakes. He talks about her love of drawing, how she wants to be an artist when she grows up, how she fills notebooks with sketches of imaginary worlds. He talks about reading to her every night, the same stories over and over, because she never gets tired of happy endings and brave heroes. Victoria listens and realizes she's seeing a version of Daniel that doesn't exist at the office, not the brilliant analyst or the man fighting to prove himself. Just a father who loves his daughter with everything he has, who would do anything to keep her safe and healthy and happy. "She's lucky to have you," Victoria says when he finally stops talking. "I'm lucky to have her," Daniel corrects gently. "She's the reason I didn't give up when everything fell apart, when I wanted to just disappear. She needed me, so I kept going." They talk until the restaurant closes at 11, about finance and ambition and the cost of success and the price of failure. When they finally leave, the city is quieter, the streets emptying as night deepens. "Thank you for dinner," Daniel says on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. "We should do this again," Victoria says, and then adds, "discuss cases and strategies and things." "This is still mostly professional," Daniel observes with a slight smile. "Mostly," Victoria agrees. "I'm still deciding what it is exactly." She hails a passing cab. "See you tomorrow, Daniel." As the cab pulls away, Daniel stands there wondering what just happened, whether his boss just asked him to dinner as networking or something else entirely, whether he's reading too much into nothing or not enough into something significant. 53 floors above the city, in her penthouse apartment that's all glass and steel and expensive emptiness, Victoria wonders the same thing. She built her empire by never letting personal feelings interfere with business, by keeping everyone at arm's length, by being untouchable and unbreakable. But something about Daniel Ross is making her question that isolation, making her wonder if success means anything when you have nobody to share it with. She pushes the thought away and opens her laptop because work is safer than feelings. Numbers don't betray you. Success doesn't leave. But even as she reviews reports and projections, her mind keeps drifting back to a corner booth in a cheap restaurant and the way Daniel talked about his daughter like she was his entire universe. And Victoria realizes with something approaching alarm that she wants to be part of that universe somehow, wants to matter to someone the way Emma matters to Daniel. The realization terrifies her more than any business deal ever has, and she has absolutely no idea what to do about it.